All right, let's get into those headlines. I'm joined now by News Corp senior writer at the Herald Sun, columnist, of course, Patrick Carline, and Chief of Staff of Pauline Hanson, James Ashby. Well, gents, I want to start with the Future Fund. I think this is absolutely huge news today. They're overturning almost 20 years of bipartisanship on this $300 billion fund. It will now be reprioritised towards political priorities. The government might want to call them national priorities, but they're green boondoggles, they're housing investments, there's a whole lot of other things. Costello's out of the way, so now they're going to do it under the new chairman. This is former union leader, of course, Labor Minister Greg Combay. He won't oppose Labor's plans. James, I tell you what, so much for the independence of the Future Fund. I think it's bust now.
Yeah, and when you put it this way, Labor were the ones that signed us up to the Santiago principles, and at number 9, independence is clearly stated, and that is something they've gone against here. So I'm not even sure whether they're going to live up to the standards they set for themselves. As you say, the new CEO is Greg Combay, who was in charge of the portfolio for environment. So that's very telling in its own right. Again, it's another appointment, jobs for the boys here in Labor's case. But we are talking about a fund that was established almost 2 decades ago. It's come leaps and bounds from the initial $60 billion that was injected from the get-go, now worth $230 billion. It's the 9th richest sovereign wealth fund in the world. And at the rate we're going, we're going to slide down that list ever so slowly as this Labor Party destroys what should be the nest egg, or, you know, the time capsule for those people into their retirement age, or to those veterans who we owe a great deal of gratitude to, and we should be paying for their futures out of this. But instead, yep, Labor are destroying it.
I think it'll be Patrick, I think it'll be an election issue if it is properly explained to Australians, because the government has to pay these pensions. The fund right now pays them, and the capital keeps increasing, and they run off the interest, and people can understand that pretty simply. But if that fund is brought down, if it invests in boondoggles, if it starts to lose money, as you might expect it will, then out of the underlying budget, the money that we need today to pay for hospitals or to pay for aged care or to pay for schools, that will have to be redeployed to pay for veterans' pensions. So this is why it matters to Australians today, because it's the opportunity cost, it's the money lost on all the other things the budget right now has to fund that we need, you know, quite immediately. And I think Labor's made a real mistake here.
I think you're right. It's going to be a massive election issue. The coalition's going to go to town on it. It fits into their narrative that Labor wants to take your money and wants to spend it badly, and wants to spend a lot of it as well. I'm surprised. I agree with you. I think the timing means it is definitely going to be an election issue. And I think, look, the coalition have done a good job today of pushing this point. This is our money. This is not a government's money to blow on pet projects or anything like that. It's something that's been very successful. It's something that we could actually be very proud of and actually take comfort in. We've got $230 billion sitting there, you know, for a rainy day, if need be. For a government to reduce it to politics as a cash grab, I think is a massive election issue, and the coalition will just push it and push it and push it quite rightly.
I want to stay on this whole issue of the finances too with you, James. Reserve Bank and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, both say that government spending is contributing to higher inflation in Australia. But a new report out today from the Centre for Independent Studies warns that federal and state governments are set to spend $110 billion off budget over the next 4 years, so over the forward estimates. It means the government, the federal government's almost $16 billion budget surplus is actually dwarfed by $77 billion that it's got sitting off the books. Now, come on, James, you and I know what this is. This is junk accounting.
Well, this money is supposed to be spent on assets for the country. The NBN was supposed to be an asset, and we know very well that if it was to be sold today, no one would buy it. They'd buy it for a song if they did, and it wouldn't return a profit for any private enterprise. One that was supposed to only cost around $26 billion. It's already blown out to almost $60 billion. And part of this money that they're talking about over the next 4 years is, again, to go into a dog's breakfast, being the NBN. Some more of that money is supposed to go into education. Well, if we're supposed to be investing in our future youth, for jobs of the future. Why have we got $80 billion worth of student debt sitting there in the background in the first place? These are, again, off the books amounts of cash that Australians must be sitting at home scratching their head saying, well, when are we going to get that money returned to us? So these are bad investments. Again, this is a government who know how to spend money, but they quickly forget where it comes from. Everyday people like you and I and those people watching at home right now.
You add it all in together, you take away the off-budget, you put the off-budget on budget. There is no surplus, Australia. There's absolutely no surplus. Nope. Now, how's this for stupidity? Yesterday, Victoria's Department of Transport and Planning, they were in hearings and they fessed up that 5 out of the 6 types of trains that are currently running in Melbourne, 5 out of the 6 models of trains won't be able to use the new $14 billion metro tunnel. The project director said, look, you know, this is in line with international best practice. How on earth, Patrick, do you spend billions of dollars on a new metro tunnel system and find that basically none of your trains actually fit in?
It's unbelievable, Peter. It sounds like 3-year-olds playing Thomas the Tank Engine. And it's something that's so, you know, emblematic of Victoria at the moment. We don't get things right. I mean, how can you, what are the passengers going to do? Are they going to change trains once they've gone through the tunnel? I mean, this tunnel's cost $13 billion. There's been street closures. It's been going on for years and years and years. And now we discover that most of the trains that run on our tracks actually won't fit into it. It just sounds distinctly Victorian. And when I say that, I mean the Victoria of the last few years, where we don't finish projects, we don't do them on time, and we don't get them right. You just got to look at the roads at the moment and the potholes. I mean, Victoria is a state of disrepair, and it is really going to the dogs. And Victorians feel like it's going to the dogs. We're not proud of Victoria at the moment. It's embarrassing, and this is just another small example. No, it's just another small example of that sort of shame that we're starting to feel for our state government and how we do things. The rest of the country is doing it so much better at the moment.
Patty, you and I are about the same vintage. You know, I remember finishing university. We were in the middle of a recession. Victoria, of course, was a deep recession. We lost the state bank. We'd had the pyramid collapse. I remember my law professor saying everyone should plan on a long degree, stay here as long as you like because you won't get a job in Victoria for the next decade. And then, of course, along came Kennett, and Victoria got its mojo back. You were happy to go into state and say you were from Victoria before you didn't, you know, you didn't want to tell anyone where you were from. I feel like that now, and I think a lot of Victorians do.
Look, Jeffrey used to talk about Victorian skies and how blue they were. And I mean, he really pushed that sort of, you know, very parochial sort of Victorians are best sort of attitude. And at times you might have cringed at times, but he pushed it really hard, and people felt it through the 90s coming out of the recession. We're back. We're back feeling, as you were saying, back at 1990 at this point, where things don't go right. There's no money. There's more taxes. People don't want to do business in Victoria. It sort of has that smell that Adelaide perhaps had in the 80s, let's say, or Brisbane in the 70s. Victoria of 2024 feels like Victoria, 1990.
Yeah, come on, Victorian opposition, pull your finger out. All right, let's go to very tough words today from the boss of Australia's biggest electricity user. This is Tomago Aluminium. The company says its goal of switching to mostly clean power by 2030 is not achievable. It's blaming increasing costs and concerns over intermittent supply as the grid moves towards wind and solar. A recent company review found Australia simply didn't have enough renewable energy and infrastructure to meet any sort of target, let alone the plant's target. Well, James, we know this. We can look at the government's policy time frame and know it's not going to work, but Tomago is a massive industry player in Australia, and we're hanging our big manufacturers out to dry.
Yeah, we sure are, and this is why the discussion on nuclear energy needs to be fast-tracked, and I'm proud of the fact that One Nation are very supportive of the Coalition's plan to at least take this to the election. I think it is one of the most important issues that we can put on the table for Australians to consider. Chris Uhlmann and Sky did a wonderful job this week with that 1-hour documentary, and if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It's one of the best simplified understandings for everyday Australians to know exactly that we will never, ever meet the needs of this country with renewable energy. And just like Tomago, Queensland is faced with the same issues. We've got some terrific smelters, and they exist in my neck of the woods around Gladstone. Again, they'll be shut down. We'll lose thousands of jobs as a result of it. And again, manufacturing, which makes up just 5% of GDP in this country, it used to make up around 25% back in the 50s and 60s, will be denigrated, all for the worse of this country, especially if we as a nation go to war and there's issues with our players internationally. So look, these need to be dealt with, and Australians need to look very seriously at that nuclear energy moving forward.
And we will need aluminium. If we don't get it from Tomago, we'll have to import it.
Yes, sure will.
We'll import it from China till such time as China doesn't want to give it to us anymore. Gents, thank you. Have a good